What's up, everybody? How's everyone doing? Welcome into another live stream here on my YouTube channel. Hope everyone's doing well, getting ready for the weekend. I have a couple things lined up for this weekend that I need to get done, including a lot more reading, and that's what we're going to be going over today. I have a lot of fall reading that I've been catching up on. I've been receiving some amazing books from publishing houses and all kinds of stuff. Hello, Barbara. How are you? Nice to see you here. Thank you for being here. Uh, Publishing houses or publishing companies keep sending me books, and I love them for that. Thank you to all of them. There are several who have me on a list where they like to send me the latest nonfiction books or books that are going to be coming out in the relative near future, and it gives me time to read them and to possibly get the authors on for interviews. And some of you have been watching me do that for several years now. And I like to bring authors on either on my podcast or a live stream, depending on what they wish to do, and allow them to talk about their research process and how they got all this information and how they put it into words. And I think a lot of us get a great deal of information out of those things. So publishing companies have been taking note of that, and they have been sending me books and books and books, and I keep utilizing them and trying to interview as many authors and historians and people who work in humanities in general as I can, get them on my schedule. And I was just scheduling out some today. Actually, we're working clear up on my calendar into January of next year with some of these books and authors. So that tells me we're getting really late in the year when I'm already scheduling it into January. But today I want to go over some of the books that I've been reading, I have read in the last few weeks, give you some updates as far as who is probably going to be coming on to a podcast, possible live stream in the future. And then down here, just off camera, I have a stack of probably 5 more books that I need to introduce you to. One that I got at one of those local free libraries, that those boxes that you have in neighborhoods. I found one that is not a new book. It was actually published in 2021, but I had never seen it before, and I'm going to share that one with you as well. And I do want to thank each and every one of you for coming in and hanging out with me for a little bit here. I tried to produce a video the other day on some of these books, and I'm not a video guy. I'm a live guy. I love to talk with all of you, and I love to interact with chat and discuss books and discuss games and discuss movies and all kinds of stuff. You know how we do it here. So I thought, what the heck? Let's just come on here and I'll just go down the list and we'll discuss and we'll talk. And you can let me know in the chat some of the books that you're reading right now. I think it's very important for us to maintain that community atmosphere here and to just enjoy each other's company. So, one that I've really enjoyed and it is really timely, in my opinion, for anyone who's watching the election season in the United States. We're discussing all these different ideas around freedom and expression, and do we stay to ourselves as Americans, or do we intersect with ideas around the world? Do we try to help out others in the world, or do we stay insular because we have our own problems, et cetera, et cetera? As an American who's living abroad, I hear about that a lot. I hear from people who say, when America has a cold, or when America sneezes, everyone else gets a cold. And that's something that I took into account with this book. And I really want to highlight this one because I'm speaking to the author on Monday. We're having a good conversation on Monday coming up. And this is going to be the next episode of the Tattooed Historian Show podcast, which the latest episode dropped this past Tuesday. And thank you to everyone who has listened to it. This one is by Paul Sparrow, and this is Awakening the Spirit of America, FDR's War of Words with Charles Lindbergh and the Battle to Save Democracy. I just got through this book last week. It didn't take me long. It's a thin book, but this is a fantastic book. I really enjoyed this, especially at this time in this era of politics that we see in the United States and beyond. This talks about certain things about immigration, or cutting off people who are possibly being influenced. Their lives are being influenced by war. and such. And do you defend the homeland alone, or do you help out others until you yourself might be drawn into a fight, etc.? FDR and Charles Lindbergh really were going at each other as far as this is concerned, because one man is basically the person who brought America out of the Depression, arguably, and another man is an aviation hero. So you have someone who is a politician who's also a popular icon, if you will, and then you have this icon from his work in aeronautical issues and being a pilot and so on. So you have those two things colliding in this book, and I really thought that was fantastic. And Paul, he has the chops to do this kind of thing. He was the former director of the FDR Presidential Library. So if anyone should write a book like this, it should be the former director of the Presidential Library for FDR. But again, this was a book that I got through in a small amount of time. It's published by Pegasus Books, and really, it's like a 3-day read for me at max. I can get through this. I've been getting so many books that I become more of a speed reader now. So Paul Sparrow is going to be coming on to talk to me about this book on Monday, or we're going to record a podcast on Monday. It'll be released the following Tuesday, not next Tuesday, the following Tuesday, because I do bi-weekly pods. This will be the next podcast, and I'm really, really looking forward to this. Just an amazing, amazing book. And some of the stuff in this book is just really timely. And I went through it and saw some of the speeches that were given, some of the ideas that were done in back rooms and other places where people are really debating, should he get involved in world events or should they stay in isolation? The isolationist issue had propped up time and time again with FDR. He said in his political platform he wasn't going to get involved in European affairs, wasn't going to get drawn into it. And then you have the paying cash by some of these other countries, England especially, paying cash and cash and carry. Then we have Lend-Lease, and it continues to go forward. There's issues around both of those in here. Lindbergh is saying, hey, this is drawing us into the war. And my friends in Europe are saying the same thing, and we need to be careful. And FDR is saying, well, England is basically the last bastion of hope against Germany at this time. And you have that fight continuing and continuing. And I think it's a really, really interesting piece to read. Really good book. Again, this is by Pegasus Books, or from Pegasus Books, and I want to thank them for sending this to me. Really one that I'm going to hold on to for a long time, because there are some good lessons in this one. Barbara, do you believe the theory that FDR knew Japan was going to attack but did nothing because getting into a war would bring us out of the Depression? I think that that's a great question, by the way, Barbara. I think that FDR knew that Japan was going to do something in the Pacific. What he did not know, as far as he was definitely taken back by Pearl Harbor. He had no idea that was going to happen that way. He thought that Japan was probably going to attack some British-held territory in the far Pacific, and he was waiting for that call to actually happen, because he thought that was the next domino that was going to fall, because they're aligned with Germany, and Germany's now fighting Britain. Britain's standing alone, and he believed that Japan was probably going to go after some British territory out in the far Pacific. And Paul puts it in his book, the reaction of FDR when they are attacked at Pearl Harbor, and he is shocked. He actually, yells so much that he yells out, "No, this can't be happening," so loudly that the person in the room with him jumps out of their chair because they're startled by what FDR is doing. They haven't seen him like this before. So I really think he was taken aback by that. And Paul goes into that in detail in here. The book really is about that period in the late 30s through American entry in the Second World War. And then you need to read the book to find out what Lindbergh does afterward. Does he change his tune about isolationism? Does he change his tune about Germany and others? What does he do? So that's all outlined in this book as well. Again, Pegasus Books, Awakening the Spirit of America, FDR's War of Words with Charles Lindbergh and the Battle to Save Democracy. It's a really, really good book that you should consider picking up. If you're into Second World War history, political history, just history of America in the interwar period between the world wars, it's a really, really good book. Pick this one up by Pegasus. And again, Paul's coming on to be on my next podcast here in a week and a half. So we're going to take care of that talk on Monday, and then it'll be released the following Tuesday. Pardon me while I put this on the floor. I'm running out of space in my office already. You can't see it, but on the floor back here behind me is just piles of books and stuff that I need to go through and read, not only for these efforts, but also for my doctoral training. So I have a lot of stuff back there. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I greatly appreciate you hanging out with me. If you haven't already slapped that subscribe button, please consider doing so. You'll have to slap the one down there. That's my little thing up there in the corner. But please consider doing so. I greatly appreciate it. Trying to build a good community here on YouTube, and we're going to be doing more lives. In fact, I'm getting ready to do another live next week. We're getting it on the schedule. So please hang out. Someone else that's coming on is Patrick Lewis and James Welburn. They're going to be coming on to discuss this book, Playing at War, Identity and Memory in Civil War Video Games. This book just dropped a few weeks ago, I believe it was, and I was happy to get a copy. This one is from LSU Press, and we have some amazing scholarship in here, and there are some fantastic decades-long issues with Civil War games. You all have watched me play Ultimate General, Civil War, and stuff, and that's mentioned in here. I used to play Sid Meier's Gettysburg. I used to play all these other ones and try to figure out, the language involved in what are they talking about? What are they not talking about? Basically, we're seeing that in this book as well. Really great stuff in here. Some amazing people did some great work in this edited work. Jonathan Jones is also in here. And if you'll notice on my schedule, whether you're looking on my Facebook page at my schedule, or you are looking at what is coming up here on YouTube, because you can see the preview windows, we're going to be talking in January about his chapter out of Playing at War, which involves Civil War memory in Red Dead Redemption 2. So keep that in mind that we're going to be discussing this, but keep in mind that I'm going to be talking to the editors. Patrick and James will be coming on to discuss their work as well. I don't think that's going to be a live stream, but I have to recheck. I know it's at least going to be a podcast, but I'll work it out so you'll get all the information. Again, I really, really enjoyed this book because I'm an old school gamer, and I've been gaming since the 90s on PC. I've been gaming since the 80s on platforms, going back to NES, and stuff like that. So it was great to be able to have this console, not platforms. And it was great to be able to read this and discuss some of the things like I saw, like the Oregon Trail is brought up a lot in here. And there's a new iteration of the Oregon Trail, a 21st century version of that just released in the last few years that discusses memory, and indigenous voices, etc. So when we're going into a book like this, it's great to finally understand how we can perceive memory through games if we can. Is there any kind of overlap between historical memory at the time and what they're putting in games? And obviously, it's going to impact how the game is portrayed based on our idea of historical memory at a certain point in our history. What was being talked about in the early 90s in Civil War scholarship isn't the same as what we're talking about now. So that can impact the gaming field. And again, this book by LSU Press, or published by LSU Press, is fantastic. It's about 300 pages or so. some really great edited works in here. And again, I'm going to be bringing Patrick on and James. They're going to be coming on. We're going to have a fun conversation about playing at war, identity, and memory in Civil War video games. And then one of the authors, Jonathan Jones, is going to be coming on to talk with me in January in a live stream format about Red Dead Redemption 2 and Civil War memory in the game itself. So pay attention to this one. This one's going to be really cool. In my doctoral training, I've taken two or three game classes. So I've talked about gaming with other colleagues and peers, and went through the idea of identity in games and such. We see that play out in here, no pun intended with play out. And it is just a great, great read. That's 300 pages of goodness, in my opinion. Really enjoyed this one. And it's made for an audience who is heavily involved in gaming and history and the ideas surrounding those two things. So keep that in mind if you're into any of those. It is a different scholarship, and the scholars who are in there are Civil War historians, they're Reconstruction historians and such, who are talking about these different games and gaming experiences. So it has credibility to it. We need to have more of that out there, and I was really happy with the final product, and I can't wait to have those two pieces of digital assets out there for you, whether it be a podcast, a live stream, or maybe a video clip. It's always great to have that out for you. Someone who has come on to my live streams before and podcasts is Tim Cook, and I'm currently working out the date and time for Tim. And he's a fantastic Canadian military historian, Canadian historian in general, and a good man all around. And his latest book is fantastic, and it really hits home for me because it's about two places that mean a lot to me. The Good Allies, how Canada and the United States fought together to defeat fascism during the Second World War. So you're getting this international aspect that really, really hasn't been discussed in this way before. I really appreciate this because sometimes we just think about Britain and America taking on, the fascists and then the Free French and others coming on board as they go. The Canadians don't get the credit they deserve. And, this was a fantastic book to try to shed light on the political, social, and military differences between the two nations and how they had to learn to work together. I really appreciated that because my background is in the United States. We moved here to Canada, and I wanted to try to figure out people who were like me, people who came from the United States, came to Canada for a new life or a new beginning, and maybe they got caught up in a war, or vice versa. Some people went from Canada to the United States to fight as well. I believe in this book, Tim says, it's right before the end of the book, in the conclusion somewhere, he states the numbers. And I thought it was fascinating because he said that there were something like 14,000 Americans who came to Canada to fight in the Second World War. Approximately, I believe that was the number. So there's a lot, and that's fantastic to think about that relationship. That doesn't mean that politically the governments were trusting of each other along the way. In fact, the king, the prime minister of Canada at the time, is hoping that the Americans don't stick around for a long time at bases like in Newfoundland and other places, because it's harkens back to the War of 1812 and stuff like that. So this stuff goes back a long way. This goes back generations. And Tim brings that to light in this book, and the way that the two nations learn to trust each other in various ways, but really more so learn to work together. At the end of the Second World War, Canada is an industrial powerhouse. And I believe they're only second to the U.S. at the end of the Second World War. U.S. is definitely number one, but I think Canada's number two. And so they've created this North American industrial revolution of their own, and an economic powerhouse comes out of the Second World War. And then memory starts to kick in, and it's almost like after the First World War, the memory started to slip a little bit. The Second World War started to slip a little bit as well, and Tim goes into that in this book. Uh, this one is just fantastic. It is done by Penguin Canada. Alan Lane brought this book out, and I'm happy to have a hardback copy. Originally, I had a reader's copy, and I want to thank them for sending me a hard copy, because they're like, we know you want like an index. It wasn't in the original one that I had. So this is my clean copy that I'm going to be keeping in my full-time collection, my personal collection. I keep all of Tim's books because he is a historian for the people in my mind, and a person who I have admired for a while because he tries to be so open and forthcoming with his content and where he's getting his information from, and trying to get more people to understand that history. I love the accessibility. You know me, and Tim is one of those guys who is an ally in that way. So if you need to understand more about the Second World War from the American and Canadian perspective, the two combined, this is a fantastic read. The Good Allies by Tim Cook. He also did an amazing book on Vimy. He did a two-part series on the Canadians in the First World War. And it was at the Sharp End, and Shock Troops was the 2-volume set. You can pick that up. That was the first set of books I had from Tim, and I've been addicted to his work ever since. He just has the prose that you need to have to connect with a wider audience. So The Good Allies by Tim Cook is definitely one you're going to want to pick up. Pardon me there. I needed to get some water. Cam, thank you so much. Trying to do more Canadian content. Trying to be a good steward of Canadian content here as an American. Not trying to come in and say, hey, this is how it's done. I just want to be able to give more to people who have accepted me here. So thank you, Cam, for that. Another good friend. We just talked about Tim Cook, and a great ally and friend for the humanities and the history field. Another good friend who I need to get in touch with very soon, because he's a very busy man. That would be Harold Holzer, and Brought Forth on This Continent, Abraham Lincoln and American Immigration. This is a great book. Obviously, it's Harold. Harold is just one of those guys, just keeps churning out fantastic works, and was really happy to see this. This is also a Penguin Random House book, by the way. For all of you who don't know yet, who haven't seen, maybe you're new here, that's fine. Welcome. Next week, Civil War Monitor is going to release episode 1 of the 1864 project that I was honored with being the host of that 7-part series. The first episode is my talk with Harold. So get ready. I'm going to be plugging that more next week. But Brought Forth on This Continent, Abraham Lincoln and American Immigration, fantastic book, because there's, again, we're talking about these issues with immigration to this day, no matter where we are, whether in Western Europe, we're in North America. We discuss these issues all the time. We talk about immigration systems and what we need to do to make it better and how we need to change things. And this channel is not going to get into the politics of all that. I'm just telling you, some things rhyme. There are parallels throughout history. And Lincoln had to deal with a lot of the same things as well, from the political standpoint. This was a fantastic work because of that fact that you can see the parallels. You can hear the rhymes of history. And Harold has always been someone who will sound the alarm in his own way, as far as, hey, you need to pay attention to what's being said, because we said this 160 years ago, or we said this further back, whenever that may be. Obviously, Harold is a huge, he's a widely known Lincoln scholar, internationally respected in that way. And this book adds to that library of his that everyone should read. Your local library is going to have Harold's works wherever you are, especially because he is a Lincoln scholar, and people all around the world have read about Lincoln in some form or fashion, whether you're in Western Europe, Eastern Europe, you're in North America, people have. So you can find Harold's books pretty readily at a library, your local library. And please, for the love of God, get a library card. It's free. You have all this knowledge out here. I am a huge proponent of your local libraries. Um, Go out and use them. Find books like this in your library. Also, the little free libraries that I'm going to talk about in a minute because I picked up a book from one. Utilize those. You'll see from time to time when I get books from publishers, not this one, but when I get a book from a publisher and I read it, I review it, I interview the author, sometimes it may not fit into my personal collection, and that's fine. I love to make sure I learn more than I would know, because maybe I wouldn't pick that book up right away. Maybe that'd be something I think about for 6 months. Well, I have the book and I just read it. I've reviewed it maybe for a video or a reel or whatever. I've interviewed the author. Now, what do I do with it? Many times, what I do is I go to the little free library, in those little boxes, and I put it in there. So you're passing history along to other people. And the other thing is, I don't have much room. I can't keep all the books that are coming to me. So I like to give them away because I got them to review. I'm going to give it to someone else. I'm going to pay that forward. And I would seriously suggest you do that if you know you have one of these little free libraries in your area. You want to help people understand history more, then do something about it. Put the book into the little free library and maybe someone can use it. That's what I do with some of those that don't quite fit into my personal collection. And I love doing it. I just went and checked the one that I sometimes plant that seed of knowledge into. I went and checked it the other day, and every book I've put in there is gone. So you need to check this out. And if you're not a Lincoln person, that's fine. You might get something out of this in a different way. You might think about language in our current situation in the world in a different way. It might spark your interest in something else. If you're into political history, if you're into Civil War history, 19th century history, if you're into immigration history, or the history of immigration, excuse me, you're going to want to pick this up. Good book. It's easy to read through. It's like reading Tim Cook. It's just nice and easy. It flows very well. There are those storytellers who I will always gravitate towards their books because they know how to tell a story. They've taught me how to tell a story when I'm on, when I'm out in the field doing my thing, the light bulb goes on, the switch goes on. It's time to be a storyteller. These people have really influenced me by their prose. And I hope that you will all take advantage of that as well through reading things like this, because this was a fantastic, fantastic read and one that I will keep in my collection. And someday when I meet Harold in person, we've only met digitally, he's going to have a few books to sign because I have a couple of his books that need to be signed. And I look forward to that. Thank you, everyone, for being here so far. I've discussed some of the books that I have read. I need to talk to you about some books that are back here on this pile, right down here off camera, that I need to read yet. And some of them were finds at that little free library, something that I found while I was dropping a book off. And I'm like, hey, this looks pretty interesting. I haven't seen this before. I'm going to try this. And sometimes I pick them up because I know it may not fit into my personal collection, but I'm trying to open my horizons, if you will, and see what else is out there. And then I'll probably take that book back to another little free library that it wasn't in previously. And then someone else in the community can take advantage of it. I'm all about that life. And many times when I do that, I saw Cam says they wished they were my neighbor for these kinds of things. When I do that, I also throw in my old stickers as well, so people know where it comes from when it happens. They're like, "Oh, okay, here's another one." Who knows? I may have someone out there who's like, "Oh, I saw one of the books that was in their library before. I liked it. Maybe I'll like this one." Who knows? It might be. I'm currently in talks to speak with Simon Reed. And Simon Reed has a great series of different kinds of books out. And I'm looking forward to reading this one. This one is from Pegasus as well. You'll see there's a pattern here. Pegasus sends me books, UNC Press, LSU, and a couple others. This all came about from just getting off track here for a little bit. Knowing these people in the publication world came about through my work with Peter Carmichael, and some of you may have been around at that time. And he introduced me to those at UNC Press, I started to learn the business of the publication companies and what they needed and how they went about sending out different monographs and files and things like that. And so I started to talk with others, and they started to see the work that I had done with Pete and the work that I did after Pete and I had completed our series. And I started to be a little bit more respected, if you will, in the publication field as a person who's a mouthpiece, a person who's like a marketer and says, hey, this is a really cool book. I don't highlight books I don't like. I highlight books I like. And so they know it's real. And that's how I got some different contacts at different publication companies just by doing the work. And this is why I say the process to me is more important than the goal, because you get to build, and I love to build. And it's almost like building a book. And Simon Reed has built a new book that I'm looking forward to reading. I haven't gone into it yet, but it looks amazing. Scotland Yard, a history of the London police force's most infamous murder cases. You know, I haven't done really any true crime on here. I need to do some true crime. So here we go. I'm really intrigued by Scotland Yard and things like that. I grew up watching detective shows as a kid because my grandfather watched them all the time. We watched Mike Hammer. We watched Law and Order. I'm an older guy. Okay. I'm in my 40s. I'm talking like 80s, early 90s here. And I watched all that stuff because he was watching it. And I got involved in true crime for a while where I was like, this is an interesting topic. I want to see what this is all about. So this came up, and Pegasus reached out to me and inquired. And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. I need to read this. So this is one of the next ones on my list. And in fact, I have an email that I need to get to from Simon or from his agent to get him on to discuss this book. It's a pretty hefty book. It is, let's see here. Well, that's the end notes, references, acknowledgement. 395 pages of good true crime information here from these murder cases. It's not one of those things where it's like he's just going to tell a story about these different cases and that's it. He's going into the way that detective work changed over time and the pros and cons of doing things a certain way in detective work, and what works and what doesn't, and how can it be changed, and how can it be made better so that crimes can be solved quicker. So there's a lot in here: fingerprints and crime scene investigations and all that, and how that changed over time. I think that sounds fascinating. I'm looking forward to reading this. It's also pretty big. I know it's hard to see, but the text is pretty big, and I don't need my reading glasses. So that's great. When you're reading all the time, the eyes start to get a little tired, and I need some reading glasses. In fact, I have two pairs of them on my computer desk right here. So it's getting older. So I'm looking forward to this, and Simon's already being worked out for my live stream schedule or my podcast schedule. I believe I'm looking at December for him, probably, but really looking forward to this. He's written some other works, The Iron Sea, How the Allies Hunted and Destroyed Hitler's Warships, book on Winston Churchill, Morbid and Criminal is the podcast he's working on. He's done journalistic work in the San Francisco Chronicle and Time Magazine. He lives in Phoenix, so I got to keep that in mind for the time slot. But yeah, really looking forward to this. And again, this is Pegasus sent this to me, so thank you to them. Really appreciate that. And it's a hefty book that I'm really looking forward to diving into. We have a couple more back here. I got a reader's copy of someone who I admire that I want to hopefully meet one day. And the reader's copy is of Casino 44, The Brutal Battle for Rome by James Holland. So I got the uncorrected proof of it. So this is what sometimes when you reach out to publication companies and you say, "Hey, I have a business where I promote books on top of reviewing and I interview authors and stuff like that." Many times you get the uncorrected proof or a reader's copy, as they're sometimes known. So, uh, but it's all I need. I just need to know what's in here so I can talk to the person and learn some things and move forward from there. James Holland just brought this out, and I'm really looking forward to reading this one. This is a hefty one. It's a hefty book. This seems to be a thing with World War II books. There's a lot of heft to them. They're pretty thick, but this one is just under 500 pages, I think. A little over 500 pages, 527 with the postscript. So this one's going to be like one of those reads I do when I'm snowed in. And I just have a cup of coffee and I'm reading James Holland's work. I'm looking forward to it. I've met a lot of veterans who were at Monte Cassino, and they were never the same afterwards in their minds. It changed their lives in so many ways. So I'm looking forward to reading this because I have that personal connection to some veterans who were there. Possibly you as well. You may have some connections with veterans who were at Monte Cassino. It's a battle that I don't know much about, and that's another reason why I wanted to get a copy, because I don't know enough about it. We are forever students of history, and that is a huge thing that I need to get across. I never want to be known as an expert in anything. I want to be known as a student. And I know what I know, and I know what I don't know, and I don't know enough about Monte Cassino. So I like to pick up books where I'm actually going to learn something brand new. And this one is definitely one where I'm going to learn a lot of new stuff. And James is highly respected out there. He's done numerous interviews. Go over to World War II TV here on YouTube, and you'll see some of the work that Woody has done with James Holland. And it's just fantastic. Good guy who is very accessible. Again, he's like Tim Cook, very accessible, very open with his research and how he gets it. And he is accessible to a lot of people. He's a down-to-earth individual. I am always going to have an ego-free zone here. I don't like to have ego on here in any form. I bring people on who don't have that. And people like Tim Cook, people like James Holland, even though I haven't interviewed him yet, people like Harold Holzer. These are people that, if they're coming on here for the most part, these people don't, have an ego. They're approachable. They're a joy to speak with and have these discussions. My thing was always, I don't prepare questions ahead of time when I interview authors. We're just going to find out where we go, and we're going to go down that road, and it's going to be natural, like we're talking in a coffee shop. And some authors don't do that. They want to find questions. They want them ahead of time and all this. I don't have time for that. I just want to sit down and chat like we just met, for a cup of coffee. And people like Tim Cook and people like Harold Holzer and Gary Gallagher and others are like that. They're like, hey, let's just talk and see what happens and go from there. And I am so grateful for those kinds of authors, because sometimes people may see others who produce 15, 20, 25 books as stuffy. I know them as Gary or Tim, because they're just down to earth people. And I'm really happy to, call them a colleague or a friend. Now, here's the one I got out of the free library. I went for a walk the other night. It's getting down really chilly now in the evenings. So I like to go out for my walks. And I went to the little free library where I usually, plop those little seeds of history into. I take that book there and I let someone else have some fun with it and learn some history. And I actually found some history for me that I have not seen this book. I think it came out in 2021. Uh, Roman and Littlefield brought this out. 2021. Lights, Camera, Fastball: How the Hollywood Stars Changed Baseball by Dan Taylor. Now, again, I haven't read it yet, but this is coming up in my to read list. I played baseball when I was a kid, and I grew up in a family who the guys played baseball. They were basically my great uncle was going to go to the Pittsburgh Pirates spring training. He got married instead, and he always said I should have gone to spring training. But that was his little joke. But we had family who were really heavily invested in like minor league baseball and possibly going up to spring training to see if they can go to camp to be in the major leagues. He was my great uncle was a fantastic catcher, my grandfather's brother. And so baseball runs in my blood. You know, I could pick up a bat and I know how to hold it based on how I was taught when I was 8, and I know the feel and I know, different things that just come natural because I was taught at a young age. I've always been a baseball person. And even though I have my hockey stuff up now, but it's hockey season. So I'm looking forward to reading this book. I did not know this was out there. And we've done some baseball history on my platform before. We had R.A. Rodriguez on to talk about some baseball history. But I'm looking forward to reading this. This is going to be a new thing for me to dive into because you hear snippets about, how Hollywood got interested in baseball and helped to change it in certain ways or helped to bring it to the forefront in different ways or whatever the case may be. But I'm looking forward to this because I haven't really read about it. I've heard about it. I've seen it on documentaries, but I want to read about it. So this one should be really cool. Taylor is a member of the Society for American Baseball Research and the Pacific Coast League Historical Society. So he's got all that background. He's the author of Rise of the Bulldogs, A Scout's Report, My 70 Years in Baseball. So, sounds like someone I need to read. And again, it looks very, very interesting. And I have never read about this. So again, reading about something I never read about, that really gets me going. I love that process. So maybe this will be something that we highlight here in the future. Maybe I get Dan on for an interview. I don't know. We'll see. The podcast needs to be, filled up, and this might be one of them. I'm going to highlight one more book before we log off here. Again, one that I haven't read yet, but that I've been sent. And I'm really, really hoping that all this allows you to get your thinking cap on as far as what you're going to read this fall or this winter, because soon it's going to be winter and we're going to be snowed in, and you're going to need books to at least line the walls to stay warm so you have extra insulation. But I received this book 2 weeks ago, I believe. And again, I apologize for going out of frame when I pick books up, but I have no more room in this place to put anything. This one's also by LSU Press. So shout out to LSU Press for sending me this one. The Abolitionist Civil War, Immediatists and the Struggle to Transform the Union by Frank Cirillo. This one looks amazing. I've heard some good feedback on this one as well. I haven't read it. It's in my to read pile that I just showed you. So it should be really, really interesting. It says on the back, Frank Cirillo is a historian of slavery and anti-slavery in the 19th century United States. He's held positions at the University of Bonn, the New School, and the University of Virginia. So this is the other thing I like. I guess it's because of my training as a public historian and having a graduate degree in this stuff. I want to bring you some of some scholars who have backgrounds in this work. I don't want to just, bring you someone who may have written a book because, they had a weekend to do something. I'm sure it's vital to some people, and that's beautiful. I love it. There's different kinds of authors, but I like to bring people on who have a little bit of knowledge base over years of time, have really put some interest into it. There's a difference. You can really tell when someone's passionate about something for a decade and or more, or whatever the case may be. They've devoted their life to understanding abolition or anti-slavery work or enslavement itself or the economics behind it, just as an example. So I like to bring those people on to highlight that because they've worked so damned hard, to make this a reality. This is hard work. Doing being an author, hard work. I don't think I can, but I keep getting told by people at the university that I need to write, and not that I don't want to write. They're just like, you need to write a book. You need to write a book. It's tough. It's tough stuff. So I'm looking forward to this because I grew up near Gettysburg, guys. This was in my blood for years and years and years. The American Civil War. Every weekend I was in that town. I was going around the battlefield. I was thinking about why the people were here, and I wasn't just thinking about tactics, but I was thinking about memory and things like that. So when I get books like this, it reignites that fire, right? That I'm thinking about things in a different way, or I'm recalling what I heard 10 years ago or 15 years ago, whatever the case may be. And perhaps now I'm going to think about it in a different way. It was the same with Cecily Zander's book, The Army Under Fire, which is sitting right over here on my pile that I need to put away. I never thought of anti-militarism like that in the American Civil War. It took Cecily's book to show me her arguments in her thesis, back that thesis up with great primary sources, and then bring it home and try to show us a different way of looking at anti-militarism in the Civil War. That's the beauty of books. I'm going to pick up the book, or I'm going to be sent the book, and maybe I'm going to learn a whole different vantage point than I had a year ago or 5 years ago. And that's why it's beautiful to think of yourself as a student of the past or a student of the humanities, because and you embrace the fact that you're going to constantly learn. And I love that fact that I'm constantly learning, constantly trying to be a better person, historian, citizen, friend, whatever the case may be. And reading books allows us to think about it in that way. I read sometimes articles and books on how to create better live streams or how to do good photography at historical sites and things like that, because I want to be better and I want to grow. That's why we read. We want to grow, at least with nonfiction. Some people read fiction because it's entertaining and possibly it's growing in their own way. And that's a beautiful thing. I'm all about reading. I don't care what you read, just read and exercise that mind as much as you exercise other parts of your body. And when we get books like this, we can start to exercise and think about things in a new way and maybe change our minds on how we thought about something previously. That's strength. Being entrenched in a thought and saying, I'm not moving from this, this is the way it was, and that's it. That is an uncomfortable situation. You think it's comfortable, you're actually uncomfortable. And I was in that spot years ago. I was entrenched in an idea, and it took someone to take me aside and put their arm around me and say, let me show you some sources. And that's how I learned when I was young. And that's why reading is so important to me. And I hope it's important to you. And I hope that you are reading as much as possible. It's very, very important to keep reading. And I tell my students in seminars all the time to continually read and exercise that mind and think critically about the world around you and look back on these things that happened in the past. And are there any echoes from the past that we can look at and describe and talk about amongst ourselves in a civil way? That is a huge thing that I need to get across to a lot of people, that I want to get across to a lot of people. And, that's a lesson that we all learn, and that's how we grow. And this fall reading is going to allow me to learn different things in new ways. And I know that some of you have a stack of books that you're trying to get through. Some of you were like I used to be, where I would buy books thinking I may not get to this in 5 years. And then 10 years later, I still haven't gotten to it. Uh, Luckily, with these little free libraries, which I'm a huge proponent of, which I've talked about a lot on the stream, I can give some books away. And I could say, hey, I didn't get to this, no longer really in my, you know, kind of vein of where I want to go scholastically. You can go with it and you can hang on to it. So that's what's huge to me right now. And please, as I said before, get a library card. Go to your local library and support them. That is a big deal. I've been able to access so many things now. It's not like the old days where you get a library card and you can go back in the stacks and get the book you want and leave. Now you can get digital subscriptions to stuff for free through your library, to documentaries. I watch Canopy all the time because there's documentaries on there. I get some other news through different news sources from around the world based off of my library card. So please go use your library, go support them. They're often overlooked. They're not seen as the hot thing at times, but I've noticed, and I'll end on this here. I've noticed amongst my students, they talk about going to the libraries a lot, not just at the university, but their local libraries. They're constantly going there, and they're constantly going to like get some coffee. So I'm so excited because now I'm cool again. I get to go have coffee and sit in the library or sit in a bookstore and hang out and be part of the in crowd again. It's fantastic. But it all leads back to this. It all leads back to getting authors on here to discuss their work, being able to plug some amazing books to a lot of people, and to hopefully keep that scholarship moving forward, because someone's going to see this book or that book and they're going to say, wow, I didn't think of it that way. I need to look up more about this, or I need to think about this in a different way. And that's how we grow and prosper as students of history. And I truly believe if you're interested in history, you're a student for life. That is a thing that I will go to my grave thinking. I'll be a 95-year-old student because I'm a historian. And I love that fact. It might keep me a little young. But I appreciate everyone coming on here and hanging out with me for a little while. As I said, I wanted to do a video originally, but I'm just, I'm not a video guy. I love to talk with you. I love to interact with you in the chat. I like to talk about books with you. And to me, it's a beautiful thing that we get the chance to do this, and that my internet works properly, and that we have the opportunity to just hang out again and just chat, because having that connection is huge, that accessibility and such. I've always been a fan of this type of thing, rather than just putting out our video and then moving on to the next thing. I think it's more important that we create a large tent of people who can talk with one another and engage and enjoy each other's company in some form or fashion, get something out of it. I just love that fact, and there's more of that to come. Look for me possibly to go live on one of my platforms tomorrow. I'm not going to give everything away, but I'm going out of town, and I would love to see you hop on to my live when I do go live. I'm probably going to go onto separate platforms overall. Like I'll go on a couple, and so everyone gets a little bit of the pie. And look for that possibly tomorrow if the weather holds out. I greatly appreciate that. Cam, anybody that goes to the library is cool. You've always been cool. Well, thank you. Thank you. The tattoos helped. The tattoos helped. Barbara, thank you for being here. I appreciate that. Thank you, everyone in the chat. If you haven't already slapped that subscribe button, please consider doing so. We also have channel memberships now to help with the software costs associated with this. Greatly appreciate my members on here. Again, there's no pressure. I just put that out there because it is out there. And I want to thank everyone who has hopped onto my Patreon and other places to help out with subscription costs for this streaming software and a few other things. believe me, it means a lot. And I know at this time that does not come lightly for you. So I am deeply grateful to each of you. And I hope to shake everybody's hand one day and thank you in person for that. Please continue to keep reading, everybody. Look for a new event announcement to come soon. The podcast has been out for a few days now, the last episode. Please go check that out. That's Andrew Sillen talking about David Henry White and his uh, captivity on the CSS Alabama. Please go check out the Tattooed Historian Show on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Thank you to everyone who's already listened. Please pass it on to your friends. I ask you to do that with any kind of my, digital assets here, where it's a video, a live stream, a podcast. Please pass it on, because word of mouth is the best marketing, because we're creating a great circus tent of people here, and I'm so appreciative of it. Take care, everyone. Be good to yourself. Keep reading. I'll chat with you next time.